I mean, how has life been treating you as a solo artist?
Well, really pretty good so far. I mean, there are some aspects that make it hard, and that, it's kind of it's the second solo record, but it's sort of like the first one in some ways. And
right, yeah.
People didn't really get the chance to get used to me as a solo artist after Euphoria Morning, because I did a very short tour, came off the tour, and wasn't out on the road again for quite a while, and it was a couple of years, and then ended up being an audio slave, putting out records and touring as the singer of a band again, and so I think there's that issue, which probably would have sort of been sorted out by now if this would be, say, my fourth solo record. And I would be sort of established as a solo artist. I don't know what that means, or if it would be any different, but the upside, the good upside of it, the good aspect of it is that I was an audio slave. We made 3 great records. And now, out on the road as a solo artist, I'm performing music, from pretty much any part of my history, I feel like. Songs I wrote since, 1990 so far as back as I've been going. Everything in between.
Do you do any Soundgarden stuff?
Yeah.
You do?
Lots. And I'm still learning more, with the band I put together, we're still learning new songs, and songs that some like Soundgarden never even played, songs that Soundgarden played sort of but differently, not really like the record, kind of anything I want, and when I mix that up with songs I wrote for like Temple of the Dog, Audio Slave songs, solo songs that I wrote for different films over the years, whatever, both solo records, there's such a variety of music that it's made the live shows really more satisfying than anything I've ever done, and more satisfying than what could be possible, I think, in a band situation. No matter what, there's no way that Audioslave would have been able to cover the spectrum of musical feel that I have going on in my solo career. So that, that's really, what stands out to me as the biggest plus. The other big plus, I think, is the band that I put together to tour with. They're a great band. We're having a great time on the road. Their interpretations of the songs are fantastic. Their ability to be able to go from like doing Loud Love or Jesus Christ Post to doing Arms Around Your Love or You Know My Name and everything in between, Seasons, Hunger Strike, whatever. They're really great at it, and that wasn't that easy to put together. I was originally going to use some of the people that the rhythm section, at least, that played on my record, Carry On. And when we started doing songs from Soundgarden, for example, it just didn't feel right. These guys were right for my solo record, but they weren't necessarily right for this tour. So I feel like I have somehow, without too much effort, it took a couple months to get everyone together, but I feel like I have a touring band that could also be musicians that I use in the studio next time I record, and guys that I would love to stay on the road with as I move along in my solo career.
I mean, would you say you're kind of definitively done with the band format now, or could you imagine going back in another band, or would it just
not like Audioslave, not in the sense of making a commitment to it being a band. And Audioslave really happened from my part because of Temple of the Dog. After that experience, I just told myself, this is the way musical careers should be. You should be able to do anything you want. And I had such a great experience making that record that I promised myself I would always be open to a collaboration that would be interesting, or that would seem like it might bear fruit. In other words, there should be no reason that's more important than the creative aspects. You know, how it's perceived, for example. And then, in audio slave, it was true. It was perceived negatively at first, and but I really remembered that. And when I got calls from Tom and Rick Rubin about the possibility of doing that, it seemed like it could be great. You know, I really thought I had a lot of other options to work with other people, and I didn't really think any of those ideas were good at all. But that seemed like a good one, and it was really.
Yeah.
But it also was something where, rather than to come out and say, you know, we're making a one-off record, I came out and said, you know, this is a band and we're going to be a band, and that I don't think I would want to do again, because I did one for 14 years. I did Audio Slave for whatever it was, 6 years, and I've done a lot of solo work within all that time.
Sure.
But I think just the way that I think musically, the way that I work musically, I think that I'm better off being a solo artist from now on.
Right.
Because it's just I can move with a lot of fluidity pretty quickly in a lot of different directions, and there's a lot of music I want to be able to accomplish before I drop dead. So, you know, this is probably the best place for me.
Yeah. You mentioned Rick Rubin there, someone who kind of was instrumental in setting up Audio Slave in a way. I mean, what's he like to work with? Because he's always mentioned by a lot of musicians as being a very inspirational figure.
Yeah. You know, there are things about him that, you know, I never let any other producer do. I really let him do his job in Audio Slave. And I thought, particularly with pre-production and as a song arranger and helping arrange rock songs that a band writes, he had a really great talent.
Right.
I also think he was very important and integral to choosing like the takes of the songs that go on the record. As far as my vocal performances go, I wouldn't let him anywhere near me when I was doing that stuff. And I didn't listen to any of his comments, really. And that's sort of unusual. I mean, most people do. That's what they use a producer for. And in that way, I didn't really like the way he worked. He was someone that was sort of, he wanted lots of options. He seems to like, you know, he likes the singer to go in and sing it, song a bunch of different ways, and let's see what the best way is. That doesn't make any sense to me. You know, if I sing a song more than 3 times, I don't like it anymore. And, you know, it gets boring. So we do it, you know, when I'm excited or when I'm bored. Those are the 2 options I have. And also, you know, when I'm writing a song with Audio Slave or like demoing a song at home, I sort of figure out what the best approach is before I do it. And so I didn't really let him get involved on that level, but still really liked working with him. You know, he is in some ways, I think, an inspirational guy. He's very supportive of the band. You know, I enjoy working with him. I really like working with Brian O'Brien too. He had mixed the Soundgarden record, but I never worked with him as a producer until the third Audio Slave record, and I think I had a great time working with him. I would do it again. That's the fire alarm going off.
Again. You mentioned Temple of the Dog earlier. I mean, that was, I suppose, kind of like a grunge supergroup, if you like. I mean, would you have been conscious at that time in Seattle of being part of a movement, or, you know, because it's seen as a very significant era in rock music, or was everyone just doing their own thing?
Well, at the time we made the record, I sort of thought of it as just kind of being, you know, this quick side project and something that I could do, and I think we all felt this. Soundgarden was like my career. It was my career band, and it was very important to me, to my life, to my future in music. And those guys they had Mother Love Bone, but they were starting to form Pearl Jam, and I just met Eddie then. And so Pearl Jam, although I hadn't been named yet, was something that they were completely invested in and were very nervous about. And so Temple of the Dog was really just a way for us to go make a record where none of us were that concerned about the outcome. And the reason why that was so great, and why I think it's helped us, all of us, in our careers, is that it came out so well, that all of us learned this big lesson, which is, if
you can make a record in 14 days mixed with 1 or 2 rehearsals that's that great, where no one's worried about it once. You can do it as many times as you want. You don't have to obsess over songwriting. You don't have to obsess over production. You don't have to obsess over performances. And it's been something that I've carried with me since then. They've said it, that, you know, with the first program record, they were trying to recreate that environment.
Right.
Sorry, when they can't evacuate.
Really?
Stand outside and finish. I'm so sorry.
Well, I don't think it's your fault unless you threw like a flaming rag.
That's what the elevators aren't working either, so you have to walk every flight in a minute.
Okay.
A little bit cold, but...
That gets better as we walk over.
Shall we just do it as we walk?
Yeah.
Did you know Nirvana at all, or were they?
Yeah, we played it. They didn't live in Seattle at first, so they lived in. No, we're good. They were from Aberdeen, which was a little town like a couple hours away, toward the ocean, and the first time I heard of them, John Poneman gave me a demo of their of what became Bleach, really, and everything on that demo was released at some point. If it wasn't on Bleach, it was part of like Incesticide or some B-side or something. But the artwork.
Do you want to see it?
No, thank you. The artwork Kurt had done, it was just a photo he took and cut and put it in there, and we just all loved it. And you could tell Jonathan was really, we all could kind of tell this is a band that's really pretty fucking incredible, which was a little bit weird, I gotta say, because it was like the 10th band in a row that had come out that year that seemed to be pretty amazing, that no one had ever heard of.
Sure.
And that, to me, that was like the last one. That was the one where I was like, holy fuck, where do they find these people? And from Aberdeen, which I'd driven through several times when I would go to the ocean or go camping or something, and there was nothing there. And it oddly enough, I think per capita was the suicide capital of the United States because of the cloud cover. So we used to drive through there and we'd be screaming out the window saying, don't do it, don't do it. And then there's this band from there, and we had played shows with the Melvins who were also, I think, from there. And then we played a show with Nirvana. It was just Nirvana opening for us, I think in Olympia, Washington. It was an outdoor show in a park, and there's probably 50 people there. And that was one of like the 2 or 3 times I ever talked to Kurt. He was really quiet then. And we never became we never became buddies.
Sure,
I think he quickly was sort of part of a group of people when he became friends with a lot of the local musicians that was sort of a little more drug oriented.
Right, sure. Did you know any of the others, or was it a similar kind of situation?
No, I was closer friends with a lot of different people. I mean, the guys in Mother Love Bone, obviously. I mean, Andy Wood was my roommate for a while, and I was friends with Stone and Jeff and
But any of the other guys in Nirvana were...
But those guys, like Stone and Jeff and guys in Green River, they all lived in Seattle. They were all sort of part of the same scene.
Right.
So we'd been around each other for a number of years. Nirvana came from somewhere else.
Right.
And by the time Nirvana was actually hanging out in Seattle and playing shows, we were already doing tours.
Right.
That's we weren't there much.
Sure. Okay, in terms of your own record, I know you put the James Bond song into that. How did that come about? Did you express an interest in that, or were you asked to?
No, it just kind of came up.
Right.
I think they just were having a hard time imagining who would be the right person to do it, and they had this crisis with Madonna in the last movie where they didn't want to use her, but the movie company made them do it, and they felt like it was in bad taste, and they changed movie companies so they didn't have that worry anymore. They could use anyone they wanted, and I think it had a lot to do with Leah Volk from Sony Music, who does the music for their movies, and David Arnold kind of deciding that maybe I would be a good idea, and then just kind of bringing that idea to the producers and saying, what do you think about this guy? Let's try that. And they were pretty decisive because they were doing something completely different with the film, completely different with the character. And I was a fan of Daniel Craig, so for me it seemed like a good idea. But they didn't come and say, well, we're thinking of a handful of different people and you're one of them.
Yeah.
So why don't you see what you can come up with?
Yeah.
I told him flat out, I said, I'm not going to, if you want to hire me to do it, I'll do it. I'm not going to, be one of 3 people writing for it.
Yeah.
And they absolutely did not do that. They were like, no, you go for it. And I started working with David pretty early on.
Right.
And that was that.
Yeah. What would be some of your favorite Bond themes? Like?
Well, Live and Let Die would be my favorite, and then
Yeah.
the Shirley Bassey ones I love.
Yeah, yeah.
Just because they're kind of surreal, and they're what I equate to James Bond themes from when I was a little child watching film and watching them on television. I don't think I ever saw one in the theater until now.
Right, yeah. Actually interviewed Simon Le Bon recently, who
Really?
Duran Duran did one, of course.
Yeah, I remember that video.
Yeah. I quite like that one actually. But you also have a cover of Billie Jean, right?
Mhm.
I mean, how did that come about? Sure, but what was the thinking behind
It was just messing around with songs and having fun. I often would learn acoustic songs just to perform once or twice just for the hell of it, and that was one I did for that reason, just for fun.
Yeah.
Just to pick something that would be completely unlikely that no one would ever expect,
Right.
and try to make it into something else. I can remember a long time ago when Van Halen had that single Jump.
Oh, yeah,
And someone did sort of a joke version as if it was Bob Dylan doing, and it sounded like Bob Dylan, but it was the song Jump.
Right.
But it was good.
Yeah.
It was kind of like that.
Right,
I wanted I was just sort of playing around with it.
Yeah.
Like when what's her name did Smells Like Teen Spirit.
Tori Amos.
Yeah. And it was like that. Like
Yeah.
unlikely, but somehow it works.
Yeah.
And what was unusual was just that it really kind of transformed the song. It wasn't, rather than just sort of making fun, it became like, oh, this is sort of an emotional song. This is no bullshit.
Yeah.
And for a dance song, it actually has emotional content to it. Once you take it out of that dance groove, it's most dance music, it's party music, it's just about sex and stupidity. So that kind of made me like it because I enjoyed singing it. It became emotional, and then when people heard it, they would really respond to it because they just had no idea that it was going to be that song.
Yeah.
They would hear me start singing it, and they'd know the melody, and they would know the words, but they wouldn't know what song it was yet. They would think it was one of my old songs or something, and be like, wow, that's interesting. And then they'd figure out it was that, and I'd get a good crowd response when I would do it acoustically. So I recorded it while we were making the record as something that could be like a B-side or something, and then I liked a lot to put it on the record.
Yeah. I think you were also saying in an interview, just a bit of one I saw last night, that you were kind of maybe a bit inspired by Johnny Cash doing...
It's
did he
really
do an
similar.
audio slave song, or was it a sound?
No, he did Rusty Cage, Soundgarden song,
Right.
which is very similar in that people didn't seem to really care about the lyrics so much. Until they heard him do it, because I didn't really know. They didn't listen to the lyrics. I mean, the Soundgarden version, the vocals are really a high register from the very start, and stay that way the whole time. So it's a lot of screaming over riffs, really, and probably not that easy to tell what the hell it is I am singing. And he's saying it in a way that's almost like talking, and he's Johnny Cash, he had that sort of really intense emotional delivery.
Yeah.
So people would comment on the lyrics of the song after his version came out, much like they comment on the lyrics to Billie Jean now that they hear it this way.
Must be quite an honour, I suppose, to have had him cover one of your songs.
Yeah.
I bet, was that a Rick Rubin, I'd imagine, suggestion?
Yeah, it was his idea.
Yeah.
Oddly, yeah.
Yeah. Just in terms of Soundgarden, I mean, like, when you came through in '91 with Bad Motorfinger, like that was a big success. But then with Super Unknown, it just became such a I mean, that was just such a massive record.
Mhm.
I mean, did that take you by surprise, just the extent of the success of that album?
Yes and no. I mean, I don't think it would have been a surprise had it not been as big. You know, we would have kind of probably felt like that was par for the course. But the fact that it sold that much still wasn't as much as Nevermind sold or Pearl Jam's 10 sold. You know.
Right.
Even like follow-ups to 10 sold more than Superman.
Really?
Yeah.
Right.
In the U.S.
Right.
So to us it was kind of like, oh, now it's our turn.
Right.
You know, everyone else had it, now we're having it. And it's still even when it was our turn, it wasn't the same sort of overwhelming commercial success. And it wasn't like hit after hit after hit.
Yeah.
And we kind of stopped that in a way too. And we put out Black Hole Sun as the second single after Spoon Man, and it wasn't what we wanted to do, but radio stations started playing it. And then the third single was, the record company wanted it to be Fell on Black Days, another ballad. And we thought, look, we're selling a lot of records here to people who never heard Soundgarden, and they don't know what Soundgarden is. And if we put out of 3 singles, the second 2 are Black Hole Sun and Fell on Black Days, we're going to start selling our records to people who aren't going to like it, maybe.
Right.
Because they're going to think it's a record full of that stuff. And that's just not right. So we want to put out My Wave as the third single. And the record company said basically, well, we'll do it because you insist. And they always did what we said anyway. But your record you'll lose momentum at radio and your record will start to fall off the charts. So just be aware of that. And we said, okay. And that's what happened. It did kind of. You know, it still sold a lot, but it did. It could have been like a bigger album, I think, had we made like the third single, Fell on Black Days, and made like a big hit video for it. Even when we released Fell on Black Days as a single and made a video, it was a black and white video performed live in a recording studio. It wasn't something that was like hit video style that would have catapulted that record into like a large audience. And you know, I don't regret it because I think we were the one band that never got a backlash from that big Seattle success. Right. Even Alice in Chains got it, I think, to a degree, and they didn't sell that many records. But Soundgarden never got it. People weren't mad at us. Like they got mad at Pearl Jam for a while. They were getting mad before Kurt shot himself. They were getting mad at Nirvana. Right. And never happened to us.
Yeah. You did a cameo in Singles as well, didn't you? The Cameron Crowe movie. Did he ask you to do that, or?
Yeah, there were a couple. That was that ended up in the movie.
Right.
There was another scene that I shot as well that didn't end up in it. Did it some other way, but we all did. Like, I don't remember. Well, Alice in Chains performed in it.
Right.
Guys from Pearl Jam were all in it.
Yeah.
Tad was in it. Soundgarden performed in it, and then I did a cameo in it. There were a lot of cameos.
Yeah. And it was him specifically, him himself, who kind of got in contact and asked you to do it, wasn't it?
Cameron?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That was we were all kind of hanging out with him.
Really?
At the time that he made that movie.
Right, yeah.
You know, we'd go to hang out and have dinner, and he'd come hang out. Pearl Jam's manager, Kelly Curtis, was a really close friend of Cameron.
Oh, right.
He introduced Cameron to his wife, Nancy Wilson.
Oh, really?
So they were all pretty close.
Right,
So,
right.
you know, he was around a lot.
Yeah. And did you like the movie? Did you think it captured that time?
I didn't. The movie was sort of separate from the music, and it was really an odd thing to see because the music was really sort of a dark, kind of gloomy musical scene. Yeah. And the movie was sort of this 20-something kind of date movie. So, you know, I didn't really, I didn't hate the movie, but I didn't love it.
Yeah.
It's certainly like when I saw Jerry Maguire, that was when I realized that, oh, okay, this guy's a very talented director and a writer. Yeah. Because I think it's a fantastic film.
Yeah.
Almost Famous is one of the few great rock movies, I think. And there are very few. Yeah. And it's, you know, especially as far as the drama, it's probably the best one.
Yeah.
But yeah, Singles I wasn't a huge fan of.
Yeah. I actually think, I don't know if you ever saw the Richard Linklater movie Slacker, but I thought that captured the whole early 90s zeitgeist quite well. More than the big budget studio films.
Yeah, I agree.
Sorry, Lane.
It's okay.
probably keep going for a second. Do you want anything from upstairs? Do you need anything besides
I need my guitar and my CD player, which is sitting on top of the guitar so it won't be forgotten. I need to use the restroom before we go. Are they going to let me do that?
We're not sure yet.
Okay.
No, that's why.
I mean, we don't think there's a fire, but it might not be a bad idea to come down with Leroy and
Yeah.
He's still getting dressed.
Oh, really?
So that's why I'm just going to tell him whatever you want. So that's it?
Yeah.
If you're cool, we can do it.
Okay.
Yeah, I will finish
But then
up.
we might just end up cutting you off abruptly when we're ready to.
All right,
rather
well,
than giving you a warning. It's already gone over.
I know. Yeah, well, I'll wrap it up shortly. Yeah, but I mean, when Super Unknown took off, I mean, did you notice like a big change in your life at that point, or was it pretty much the same?
No, it wasn't. The big change kind of happened without Shine, and it was MTV, and that was like literally it happened within hours of being on television at that time. And MTV, you really have to give them credit for the overwhelming success of Nirvana and Pearl Jam. It was very video-driven, very much more than radio-driven. And the success of all the rock music at that time, I think was video-driven.
Yeah.
The transition into what became considered new rock music was very video-driven, and it wasn't just Seattle bands. It was also like the Red Hot Chili Peppers had a huge impact via videos, and it wasn't music that people were used to hearing on rock radio or seeing on MTV.
Nine Inch Nails is a lot closer
Yeah,
to video.
exactly. And I remember that when it was happening, and people don't talk about this much, but I think it really started with Man in the Box, because it got airplay, and I guess some people could say that it started with Welcome to the Jungle, which maybe is closer to the truth. But if you want to talk about the actual Seattle bands and MTV taking a chance on the Seattle bands, that started with Man in the Box.
Right.
And it was because there was a tour called Monsters of Rock, which was like a whole bunch of heavy metal bands that weren't commercial metal bands so much. They were more like Iron Maiden type heavy metal bands.
Right.
Bands that didn't get their videos played on MTV in the United States except for Headbangers Ball, which was once a week for an hour and a half late at night. And but MTV sponsored the tour, and they wanted to play a video from some band on it because they were sponsoring the tour, so they wanted to help promote it. So Alice in Chains was on that tour, and they had a video, and the song was kind of catchy. It wasn't as heavy or as heavy metal as a lot of what was on that tour. You know, like who was on it? I mean, Slayer was on that tour, and they weren't going to play Slayer, so they started playing Man in the Box. And that was their first record. It was their first video I think they made, and the record sold 600,000 records in the U.S. because of that. And I think that's when a light went on over MTV's head, where Alice in Chains wasn't the first band to get signed, and they'd already been playing Soundgarden videos like on 120 Minutes and Headbangers Ball, but that was from like Louder Than Love and from Bad Motorfinger. So after that, that's when they took a chance on Nirvana, and they took a chance on Soundgarden, and they took a chance on Pearl Jam, playing them in what was then called Buzzbin, which is like immediate heavy rotation. And that's what transformed everything. That's where you saw Pearl Jam's record come out, enter with like, you know, in the high 50s or whatever it was, fall off the charts, and then all of a sudden shoot to number one, stay there forever. It was because of MTV. And Outshine was the first video that they played a lot of for Soundgarden, which is from Bad Motorfinger, and literally within hours of it being on TV, probably 15 times a day, I was getting recognized in the weirdest places. And we were in the middle of Mississippi, I think, on a tour, and I went into a grocery store that was a 24-hour store at 4 o'clock in the morning, and the butcher, who was about 45 years old, recognized me. And the video had only been playing for about 7 hours. And I couldn't believe it. He was like, "You're from that band, you're on TV." And I looked at him like that. I thought, that is just fucking unbelievable. And that, I started noticing that record cycles, it would there was an ebb and flow to my recognizability.
Right, right,
Like
right.
after we'd be done touring and a record cycle would be over and the videos would stop being played all the
Yeah.
time, I could go out in public and not get recognized
Right,
very much.
right.
And then when the new record would come out and the new video, suddenly it would be harder again. And then it would get easier and then harder. And like right now, it was easier than it had been for years as far as recognizability until the James Bond DVD came out. On the DVD, the extra disc, they put the video that I made of you know my name on that, and within 2 or 3 days of it being released, I noticed like in airports, people who would never have recognized me start not necessarily knowing who I am or why they recognize me or why I look familiar, but you know, like old women kind of going, you know, they might think that I'm somebody's nephew. There's they don't know why they look twice, but they do. So that has a big impact. Before MTV, before videos, the only way you were going to be recognized is if it was a fan of your band that has your records and has looked at the pictures. If you're a band that has pictures, you know. But who knows? If you're Genesis and maybe you're Peter Gabriel and it's 1970 whatever, you could walk down the center of London and no one will know who you are.
No, it was a real explosion on it. Nevermind, it's still my favourite record ever, actually.
It's really an amazing record.
And favourite band, actually. Gary Lucas plays on this album, who did, of course, play with Jeff Buckley as well. And you were quite, you were friends with Jeff Buckley, weren't you?
Yeah.
You oversaw the release of Sketches for My Sweetheart. How did you get to know him? Like, were you just a fan of his, or did you play with him?
He was a fan of mine.
Oh, really?
He came to a London show when he was on the road by himself, without a band. And the day before he came, I think it was the day before, someone from the record company gave me a Live at Sine disc, and I listened to it. And, you get a lot of CDs on the road when you're traveling, and it's all usually pretty bad. And this was really fucking the only one I've been given where it's like, probably since someone gave me the Nirvana sample that I like listen to something and go, oh my god. Remember that? I remember hearing the 4 songs that were film demos that Eddie sang over, that were just 4-track demos, and Eddie sang over. I remember hearing that, like he sang over them from San Diego and then sent it back.
Oh yeah.
I remember hearing that and had that having an impact on me. And then this Live Snake had a really huge impact. So then, like, he came to the show the next night and we hung out and became friends. And we were just kind of friends after that.
Okay. Were you a fan of Aerosmith?
Yeah, I was never like a rabid fan of Aerosmith's, but it was one of those bands, like if you're an American kid growing up, you're exposed to it, it's an influence in music, and kind of forces you as an American also to sort of look at the history of rock music and the important bands in rock music, and especially ones that have had a legacy, and how many have really, most of them not been American, because it's really true. Most of the longer lasting ones that have a huge discography of great music are British. It's really strange.
Or Irish.
Or Irish. True.
Alright, thanks for that, Chris.
All right.
I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Great, thanks.